Welcome to the One Stiletto in the Grave podcast with your hosts, Sonny Ormond and Jane James.
Well, hello, lovely listeners. We are back and feeling electrically charged. Bit of Ambridge there. We're full of beans, COVID and carrots. Oh, that's the jasper kind, not the edible kind. Do you see what I did there? Here, you say. But can you? In noisy hostelries, we talk aging ears, hot tubs and hot mess. Dorothy drops in to say hello, Janie opens her big barn door, and Sonny dusts her nooks and crannies. But first, a word from one of our sponsors. Are you ready to cast off those dull old blacks and greys and embrace colour? Kettlewell sells high-quality wardrobe essentials in more than 300 colours. From everyday basics to jackets, skirts, dresses and scarves, each Kettlewell style comes in a range of colours in 4 seasonal palettes, so you can choose the exact shade for your skin tone. And when you wear your perfect shade, your skin looks fresh, glowing and youthful. We're ready to embrace the rainbow. Are you? Visit Kettlewell at www.kettlewellcolours.co.uk. Well, hello, Janie. We're back after quite a long time away, actually, from these microphones, and a lot has happened in the world and in the Archers. One of the things is that I've had COVID, and you've been to Portugal.
I think I got the better end of the deal there, Sonny.
I think you definitely did. You definitely did. I mean, I have to say, I'm still recovering from COVID, and I'm sure many listeners out there have been in the same situation as me. You suddenly start to actually appear to be negative, but you're still feeling pretty rubbish. And anything that I do, even if I do the washing up or something like that, or anything, I suddenly feel tired again. And it's a very weird thing, but I gather it's a symptom, or can be a symptom, of COVID. Just pray I haven't got long COVID.
Oh, I hope not, love. Because it has lingered for you. You've been feeling rubbish for a couple of weeks now, haven't you?
It's you think you feel better, and then suddenly, as I say, you'll do something and think, oh my goodness, or wake up in the morning feeling a bit sort of heady and a bit nasally, and and all that. But it was a horrid thing. It was very flu-like, but worse, I would say. Yeah. But I was very surprised when it happened, quite honestly.
It's the first time you've had it, isn't it?
It is the first
time.
Probably, as you say, probably, because I have had various bugs over the last couple of years, some of which did appear to be like flu and I'm not being very nice. And I've been surprised when I have done a COVID test to discover it wasn't COVID, if you know what I mean. So, but I gather sometimes you can have it and it doesn't show up, and there's all sorts of stuff, isn't there?
I think that's true. I mean, as far as I know, we haven't had it. I think we're the only people in the world who haven't had it. But on the other hand, we did spend quite a lot of time sort of sequestered at home and not going anywhere. Yeah. And we're still not going out and doing... We're going out and doing more. I've been to Portugal, so I've been on an aeroplane.
I know, so tell us about that, because, that is quite something, Janie, that you've done that.
Do you know what? It was a long weekend in Lisbon, and it felt like a trip down the Amazon, because it's just so long since I've been anywhere. I used to just hop on an EasyJet flight and think nothing of it, listeners, but blimey O'Reilly, it all seemed terribly, terribly stressful. And then I went with a chum. She was feeling much the same. But when we got to the airport, thank God, we sort of remembered. We bumbled through it all and remembered how it worked. But yeah, it's lovely to go and be somewhere different. It was absolutely delightful.
What happened at the airport? I mean, is it very different now at the airport? Are there more strenuous sort of check-ins and things like that?
Well, I think it's always different, isn't it, in every bloody airport. Some of them want you to take your shoes off, some of them want you to take your coat off, some of them want you to take your jacket off, some of them want you to take your top off, but they're the ones that we don't really go to. I don't really know how different it was, because every airport is different. But there was, of course, it's my first time going through the not a European person queue.
Were there lots of queues?
We were really lucky when we got to Lisbon, because there was a naffing great queue for non-EU people. But the very nice chap at Lisbon looked at us, saw we looked very elderly and a bit out of it, and waved us through the EU line. So grey hair helps, I think. Grey hair helps.
Yes.
I was very, very lucky to be able to get away. And like I said, much much the better deal of it. And of course, lots happened in the Archers, hasn't it?
Yes, a lot has happened in the Archers, hasn't it, over the last few months? I suppose mainly the death of Jennifer, which has had huge ripple effects in the community, particularly to the family, of course.
Yeah.
People falling out with each other. I mean, Lillian, of course, fell out with brother Tony. They have now maybe been able to resolve the issues, and I think probably will have brought them closer together. But I mean, certainly Jennifer's children have been falling out left, right, and centre.
Dear me, it's all been a big kerfuffle, hasn't it? But I think it's interesting because when someone who's part of a community dies, it does affect people other than the family. And, we've lost people who are close to us that aren't family, haven't we, Sonny? And it's hit us hugely hard and hit many other people very, very hard as well. So I think that's been interesting. And the way that the children have been behaving is very weird. And Brian has the air of a man who's a bit on the edge. What I've loved about it is Susan giving him a jolly good telling off. I enjoyed that.
Yes, and I think I enjoyed as well the coming together of Susan with Alice. Because I suppose there was a lovely scene between them where Susan really, it was a lovely, warm, caring scene. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. This is now a development within that relationship, because Jenny having gone, in a way, Susan, although, of course, Alice and Christopher are estranged, she's still very much the mother-in-law. And it's almost like, it was lovely and a warm scene for them. And I think it's interesting with Alice as well. She's sort of beginning to become the little matriarch of the family as well, it seems, in her relationship with Rory and Adam and even Kate to a certain extent. But no, it's been quite interesting, hasn't it, with Brian, the route that he's gone down, wanting to just get rid of everything that was to do, not in his heart, but the actual physical trappings. And everybody does respond differently, don't they? When somebody passes on, dies.
I think they do. And but it seems a bit soon to be moving house, I must say.
I know. But of course, the Willows was never really a place that they weren't that happy there.
No, they didn't
actually,
like it, did they?
They didn't really like that. But and of course, generally, the public who listened to the Archers, I think, were really shocked by the passing.
Yeah.
I was getting lots of texts from people saying I was listening to the radio, I had to pull up by the side of the road. I was in shock, about what happened.
Well, it's been like a big time for that family in the Archers, hasn't it? With Peggy going and now Jennifer going as well. I mean, Peggy's still around, but she's spoken of but no longer heard. And that would have been an awful thing for June Spencer to have had to do had she still been in it, I think. Been very, very challenging.
Yeah.
Big changes in Ambridge.
Big changes. And then, of course, we've also got, at the other extreme, all the business with the electric motor cars and all this business about where the electric station is going to be, and Jim going ballistic and all issues happening at Brookfield and, staging a sit-in almost.
Yeah. And then apologising 20 minutes later. It does all seem very strange, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not entirely sure what his objection is to electric cars being charged in the village.
Yes, I think I think, as my understanding is, it's less to do with the electric charge where it's the position of where it's going to be. I think if he thought it was on the outskirts of the village, I think he would have been happy with that. I think he feels that we're going to get loads of cars coming in. That's my understanding of it, coming in and out of Ambridge. So.
As if, because nobody can find bloody Ambridge on a map. So I doubt very much if Ambridge is going to be taken over by millions of tourists. And if it were, then a lot of people would be very happy, wouldn't they? I mean, Kenton would be delighted to get lots of people who can afford electric cars having to wait for an hour or so while the car charges and having a drink and a meal at the Bull. So.
Indeed, and the village shop, you get a few more passers-by, wouldn't you? The village shop and, Lower Loxley, the hall and, yes, B&Bs. Of course, the B&B's now happening, isn't it, at Brookfield? That's Ben's baby, isn't it?
Well, oh, absolutely, yes, yeah. And good old Ben is now working at the Laurels, isn't he?
He is, as a nurse or as a care assistant there. Yeah, we've had quite a few scenes there, haven't we? And of course, yeah. So that's all good. Jasper Carrot there, haven't we now? Playing Sykesy, the farmer Sykesy.
Jasper Carrot.
Yes.
I wonder how he's getting on with Christine Barford.
I wonder. And indeed, you know, how is he getting on with Peggy as well? Because of course,
yes, I can't. Well, I don't know. I can't imagine that she'd be a fan of him playing the guitar.
No, I don't
singing
think so.
bawdy songs.
I don't think so.
But perhaps Sykesy doesn't do that. Perhaps that's just Jasper Carrot.
Today's podcast is sponsored by MTL Associates. Would you like a website but don't know where to start? Could your business do with that bit extra? It's less than you think. MTL Associates produces websites for people like you. They'll agree a fixed price for their work, starting from £50 for a 5-page website using one of their templates. And after that, it can be as little as £14 a month. MTL Associates. It's you, but online.
We were thinking about what we wanted to do with this series of the podcast. One of the things that we wanted to do was to introduce you to Dorothy.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Now, the thing about Dorothy is she's a character that Janie dreamt up for me some time ago now, and she turned it into a one-woman show that we toured actually very successfully, blowing our trumpet here. But over the years, we have toured it successfully, haven't we, Janie?
Yeah, very much so. And the idea behind it is that Dorothy is Sonny Ormond's aunt, and she's not at all impressed with the type of character that Sonny's playing in The Archers.
That's right, and she has very forthright views on everything, from, delicatessens to maybe dog poo, hasn't she, really?
She does. So we imagined what would happen if Dorothy had her very own podcast, and we'll be bringing you highlights from her shows. And here's a clip from her very first podcast, introducing her show, ...
Well, hello, listeners. Dorothy here, and welcome to my podcast. Now, it's aimed at the discerning listener, so if you keep your spare toilet rolls under a knitted doll, this is the place for you. Now, my old chum Monica's in charge of the technical stuff. Between you and me, listeners, this may prove to be a bit of a mistake, as she has enough trouble with the dimmer switch in the lounge. Her granddaughter Gemma's written out the instructions, but if Monica looks through the wrong bit of her varifocals, we may suddenly go off air. Now, I am broadcasting to you from my flat in Beechcroft, which is a retirement home in Knutsford. It's supposed to be warden-controlled, but the warden can't control her drinking, let alone anything else. Do you know, it took 3 of them to drag her home across the car park on New Year's Eve, and she scraped her knees very badly on the gravel. Now, as you can tell, broadcasting comes naturally to me, and I do have connections in the media, what with my niece Sonny being Lillian Bellamy in The Archers. I've had a certain amount of ribbing over the years about my niece, the actress, and when are we going to see her on the telly. She gets very huffy when you ask her that. Well, didn't you see me on Inspector Morse? She says. Well, no, she was in a body bag, but it doesn't do to say so. She's done theatre, but none of it suitable for respectable folk. So, when I heard she got the part of Lillian in The Archers, I thought, thank God for something tasteful at last. Now, I know radio's not the same as telly, but The Archers is a proper programme, if you know what I mean. And let's face it, Lillian was a real lady. None of the Susan Carters about her. Married to the squire, respectably widowed, roadside saddle, that sort of thing. Well, God knows what was supposed to have happened in the Channel Islands, but gone was the elegant, refined Lillian, and in her place was a man-eating, gin-swilling loudmouth. I can see why they cast my niece. There's not a lot of acting involved. Oh, and when she did that Lillian laugh, oh, coarse and common, well, I was a laughing stock. I couldn't set foot in Morrison's for weeks. Now, listeners, what has happened to Ambridge these days? It's all hot tubs and depravity. I miss the real heartwarming stories like TB and swine flu. Still, compared to the rest of Radio 4, it's a haven of respectability. Gone are the days when you could get a recipe for pancake batter off Woman's Hour. Do you know, I tuned into something on waxing the other day, thinking I'd pick up some tips on how to bring a shine to my sideboard. Well, let's just say that's not somewhere I've ever needed to flick a yellow duster.
Ooh, and cut. I think Dorothy's rather taken to podcasting, don't you?
Yeah, I think she has. She doesn't hold back, does she, our Dorothy? You know, she's straight in there. And there's going to be more from her very soon, isn't there, Janie?
There is. Whenever it's just you and me chatting, there'll be some
Absolutely.
Dorothy in there, won't there? She has been fun to do, and we have been all around the country with her, haven't we?
We have, and she has been. We played quite a few theatres, haven't we, with her? And it was quite interesting for me transferring it to radio, really, because obviously before I've been playing it in a big spaces, and you wrote it for big spaces, so it's been quite interesting finding a slightly different level for her, and also trying to create other characters which actually the listener won't have heard yet, but creating those really in the radio environment has been quite interesting and quite a challenge, hasn't it? But people have loved it, haven't they? People have loved the show when we've been playing it in theatres. I mean,
well, they have. I just hope they like what we've done with it here. We will find out.
We will
won't
find
we?
out.
We will find.
We will
but
find out.
What I love about it is that she is about as different to Lillian Bellamy
Yes.
as you can get. So it's
Yes.
this is sort of somebody that we must put one of the pictures of you just as Dorothy on the along with the show, because you do not look like Lillian Bellamy when you're dressed up as Dorothy.
No.
You
And that,
really,
and that
really
of course, is been the joy of it, Janie, when you wrote her for me, because it's so different. I mean, I've been playing Lillian for 20 odd years now, and I love her. But it was lovely to get my head inside a completely different character, and also because I come from the north, I understood those women in a way. You know, it's been quite fun to explore her, just get inside her head, and of course on stage I've got the advantage of having my wig and the costume and so on and so forth. Again, transferring it to radio, you're trying to inform or create that vision just through the voice. So anyway, fingers crossed that people will love her out there as much as we love her, and as much as the audiences have loved her when we've played in theatre.
When we played her in theatre. Well, that's let's see what happens. But so she's not very happy about those hot tubs, though, is she?
She isn't, is she? She'd have a lot to say, wouldn't she, about those hot tubs in Ambridge?
Have you ever been tempted by a hot tub, Sonny?
I have been in a hot tub, yeah.
But have you been tempted to put one in your garden?
No. Have you?
No, the foxes have been in and out of it. So and the pigeons. It would just be a sort of general swimming pool for the wildlife.
Yes.
I have been in one. Where have you been in one?
Well, it was a mutual friend of ours, actually, many years ago. I possibly won't. Mutual friend anyway. And it was quite fun. It seems a bit of a palaver. That's a good word, isn't it? Palaver. It's all that sort of, getting undressed, getting in your speedos, as in Mick's case, of course, in the Archers. It's. I know it's supposed to have the effect of being really relaxing, isn't it, out in the open air, but I'm not sure it does it for me terribly much, really.
No, I don't like, the hot doesn't go well with hot flushes, and the ones that I've been in, we stayed in an Airbnb once that had one, but I was like, I don't know who's been in it before, and I don't know if they've whittled in it, so...
I know. Yes.
So I'm never keen on bathing in somebody else's bodily fluids, really.
No,
so,
I totally get. I often feel that if I go into a jacuzzi or something like that,
yes.
I think, what's been going on in here before I've got in,
Yeah.
It's
not a nice thought, isn't it?
It's not.
I don't mind. I quite like I think it'd be steam room.
Yes. And or a sauna.
Don't mind a sauna.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
And I guess there's probably just as much unsavoury stuff flying around in there, but somehow you're not sitting in it. It's sitting in it. It's like sort of going to somebody's house and they ran a bath a week or so ago and various people have been in and out of it and sitting in their bath, isn't it?
Yes.
It seems a bit unhygienic to me.
It does. But I think a lot of people, it seems to me, that do use hot tubs do enjoy knocking back the odd vino as well. So probably if you have enough vino or whatever is your tipple, you don't care who's been in the hot tub previously, do you?
I see. So is that a secret to it?
Well, I think it
have
could
a few
be.
drinks first.
I think it really could be, you know. And of course, I suppose you could always, couldn't you, take your biscuits or your chocolates into the hot tub and you'd get your crumbs in there. I mean, all sorts of extraordinary things.
Oh, God,
you know.
no.
And it's yes. I don't know, climactically as well. We're not...
Sorry.
Is climactically a word?
I just hope
I'm not
nobody's
sure
been
it is.
climactic in a hot tub. What? What are you on?
But I don't know what I'm on. Well, I dropped my microphone earlier. I think it's something to do with that. Hit me on the head. But our climate to me doesn't.
Oh, I see.
Do you see what I'm
Climate.
trying to say?
The climate. I got you.
I think that's a good
I
word.
thought you-
Climactically.
I had that completely ass about face, so to speak.
Oh, you thought I said climaxically?
I thought you were talking about people climaxing in a hot tub, which
I'm
it was
sorry.
just then I'd not even thought of that. That's even worse. Oh,
I'm very sorry about that. No, I wouldn't have lowered the tone thus far. I'm surprised that you thought that I would have lowered it so far. No, it's to do with the climate. The climate, you see.
I'm with you.
I'm not sure, yes, that it's quite the right climate. Although people would say, wouldn't they, if it's cold outside, you plunge in there and it's lovely and warm and the contrast between the air and the
people
water.
say that, don't they? I've heard all of that before in my life. It's lovely once you're in. It's like, no, it isn't. No, it really,
But
really
even
isn't.
if it is lovely once you're in,
You've
Jane,
got to get out. I know. No.
You know.
No, not for me. Not for me.
Not ideal.
No,
Not
we've got a
ideal.
paddling pool in the garden for when the grandkids come over, and that'll do me.
Well, of course, Lillian's been in a few hot tubs actually
Oh,
in
I
the
don't-
Archers over the years. With that Matt chap, she was
Yes.
that. Yeah, so that tiger.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were fun scenes to record actually. But no, I don't think I will be installing one either. Actually.
Okay. All right. Obviously, if any hot tub manufacturers are listening and want to sponsor us huge amounts of money, then we'll take a free hot tub and give it a try. But
Yes.
yeah. Well, moving on
Yes.
from hot tubs to noisy pubs, because one thing that we did while we were out was we went to see Angela Barnes, didn't we, in Oxford? We all met up. And God, she was brilliant, wasn't she?
She was fantastic because some of the listeners may remember that she's a great Archers fan, isn't she?
Yeah.
And she's been a wonderful guest in the last series. So we went to see her in Oxford and she was wonderful. She was so funny. She was brilliant.
So funny. It was fantastic. And we met up for a meal before the show, didn't we, in a pub. And I had actually specifically asked, I'd said, I can't always hear when a pub's noisy, and it was a Friday night. Can we have a quiet table? And we had a table with a bloody speaker right over the top of it, didn't we? Jeez. And this just... I know I've talked about hearing before. I had my hearing tested again a couple of weeks ago and got the same old guff about how I've got some hearing loss, but it's only what should be expected at my age. And I said, is there any way, anything I can do so I can hear in a noisy pub or a noisy restaurant? And the answer is no. Is it just me, Sonny, or do you get this as well?
Exactly the same thing. Well, it was for us when we met in Oxford, and they had put us at a table at the back of the pub, but that's where the blinking speaker was, and it was impossible. And we were with somebody who was a little younger than us as well, who had the same issues. Let's face it as well. No, it's so intrusive, and I can't bear it. And in fact, the other night I went to a drinks do before a show. It was a preview of a show, and there were a lot of people there, and it had exactly the same effect. I couldn't wait to get into the theatre because it was just so intrusive, and I couldn't focus quite on the person I was with because of this peripheral noise all the time. No, it's not pleasant, and I'm... even restaurants, I mean, that was a pub that we went in, but, often you can be in restaurants now, can't you? And the same things happens. It's that intrusive sound.
So
it's hard work.
Why do they do it, though? I mean, I think with some of the kind of lower end ones, the idea is they make it noisy so you don't linger, you eat your food and go. But we've been in quite nice restaurants that are still really, really noisy. And there must be people of our age. There's a whole load of us who perhaps don't go out as often as we would do, because we know if we go out with someone, we're not going to be able to hear a word they say. Oh, sorry, I went a bit squeaky there. Hang on.
No, but it's true, and it's the business of pumping sound out. You know, why have you got to have all this music being pumped out? Because you get that in restaurants as well, don't you?
You do.
No, it is extraordinary. I suppose the idea is that, you know, it's like pumping up people's energy, isn't it? You know, they like the music, it gets them going and all that. But actually, it's fine if you're at a disco. Can I use that word, disco? Is that something we use these days?
I don't know.
I'm sure probably
A
not.
club, perhaps.
A club, or a rave. A rave.
rave.
Oh, listen to me, hark me. A rave. Yeah, it's that kind of pumping atmosphere, everybody. But you don't want it in a restaurant, do you? When you're trying to have a conversation, it's fine if you're dancing and just wanting to. Yes.
No,
It's,
well, because what happens is that it's noisy, so everybody shouts a bit because they've got to shout over the noise, and then you've got an entire pub or restaurant of people shouting. Is this just us listeners? Do you get up your goat as well? Is there some way that we can tell? I sound like Dorothy now. Is there some way that we can tell these people to just turn the noise down a bit?
To alter their ways. Yes.
If somebody opened up a restaurant or a pub that advertised itself as somewhere that you could hear yourself speaking, that would be top of my list of places to go. I've never heard, I don't think I've heard background music in the Bull.
No. Now that's a point. Has that Bull upstairs probably?
Well, yeah, because they've got a music venue
They've
upstairs.
got the
haven't
music.
they?
But no, I think you're right. I don't think there is. I'm not mindful that I've heard that actually. Yeah.
No. If only we could find Ambridge on a map. We
if
could go and drink at the Bull.
We could. And Kenton would be, you know, very welcoming, because obviously since COVID, you know, they want to get the monetary return there.
They do.
You know.
They do.
Yeah, indeed.
Speaking of Ambridge, as I just was,
Yes.
I thought, we thought, didn't we? We might have a little special of behind the barn door questions that we'd like to know about Ambridge. And here's a question I'd like to know about when you record it. When you're recording, can you hear the background noises, like the cows and the dogs and the peacock if it's still alive, and the cars and all the rest of it, or do they go in afterwards after you've finished recording?
Generally, they go in afterwards. So, particularly with the Archers, because it's a very fast turnaround, it's a fast recording. So often, so you have to use your imagination. Yes, often. I mean, for instance, I do remember some years ago, Lillian had to dance with dear Jack when he was alive, you know, Peggy's
Right.
Jack, her stepfather. And I do remember at the time we were supposed to be waltzing around, and in that situation they did drop the music in behind us so that we could get the rhythm of it. But it's rare because it's time consuming to do that, really. And also, if you drop things in live and you fluff as an actor, you've got to go right back to the beginning again.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just record something cold and you fluff,
Right.
that's fine. You can just go back to the beginning of that line. But if you've got background music, of course, the whole thing's got to be recorded again.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why things tend to be dropped in afterwards.
Oh, that's interesting.
So that's the background. So obviously, things on set so that we have our spot person. We've talked about our spot person before. And in fact, we had Karen on, didn't we? Karen Carter in the very first series, who's a studio manager, talking about sound effects and how it all works from the technician's perspective. But yeah, if it's something that's happening on the floor, like, I don't know, for instance, you're having a cup of tea or you're eating or something like that, then the spot person, you will hear them maybe sound of pouring the tea. That will be happening live. But things like peacocks and cars and things like that. I mean, you will hear, for instance, a car if, as a character, you arrive in the middle of another scene, and there's got to be timing then. So, for instance, you would hear the car quite faintly in the background on a speaker driving up, and then you'd hear the car door closing, and you know that's when you need to speak. If you were. But yeah, so in a situation like that, because it's about timing, really, right, for everybody. But generally, it tends to be put on afterwards.
So it's only if it's needed for the timing of the scene, or if if you're drinking tea or whatever, then it'd be very difficult to put that in afterwards. The sort of clinky of cups and so on. But everything else, so it must be quite interesting when you hear it back afterwards, when you've done it without all of that. Cause it's another dimension of sound, isn't it? When you've done it without that, so it's very interesting to hear it back afterwards.
It's quite tricky. You do have to use your imagination quite a lot, because sometimes, for instance, it was with the bull upstairs. I know we've had situations where our lovely studio manager who's twiddling all the knobs will say, look, there is going to be background music on this, guys, so you need to speak up. So again, you have to imagine. It's a bit like what we're talking about now, isn't it? Background noise and pubs and things like that. Again, we have to think ourselves into that situation and what that feels like and what that does, how it affects our voice. So yeah, there's a lot of imagination that has to go into it sometimes. It's, mind you, if we'd been in that pub that we were in Oxford, we would have been screaming, wouldn't we? The studio manager would have been saying, "Sorry, too much," but actually that is the reality.
It's a shame. It's a lovely pub, but when we came out,
very nice. Yeah, and the food was very good. It was nothing wrong with that.
It was delicious. But when we came out, the bliss, and we came out onto a busy main road, but the bliss of leaving that sound behind, it was lovely, wasn't it? It was lovely. And then we went and immersed ourselves in Angela Barnes. Her tour, her show is called Hot Mess, and it's touring around the country. Honestly, go and see it if you get the chance, because it is a very, very, very funny night out.
It's very funny. She was great, and
she was terrific.
The comedian that she had with her, she always brings somebody else with her. Was it James?
Forgot his last name.
James Ellis?
Yes, I think it was.
He was fabulous too. He was great fun. And she did say that they were going to be putting more dates in, I think, towards the end of the year.
I can see they have.
Have they done that already?
They have.
So yeah.
So go and look at her at Angela Barnes's website, listeners, and get along and see that show. It is great, and she's terrific.
She's brilliant. And talking about shows, actually, just before we move on to anything else, one of the things that I saw just a few weeks ago was Sir Ian McKellen in Mother Goose, playing Mother Goose. And it was a most fabulous, we went to a matinee, fabulous afternoon. And John Bishop is in it as well. But he's amazing, Ian McKellen. He's 83, 2 shows a day. I don't know how many costume changes he had. Great admiration for him. It was a fun afternoon. Yeah, so I think it's because we saw that in Oxford as well as Angela Barnes, so that's what reminded me. Of
course you did. Yeah. Yes, another, and he's a big fan of the Archers as well, isn't he?
He is a big fan of the Archers,
as I understand it.
Yeah, he is. Oh yeah, great fan of the Archers. I think maybe it's about time to wind up. Is it? Do you think it is?
What's for dinner? Is it spag bol again tonight?
Oh, darling, you guessed. How did you guess?
It's not, is it?
No, it's not, actually. I don't. Do you know, to be truthful, I don't know what it is going to be, actually, tonight. What about you? Well, have you got yourself sorted for your supper? Stir fry?
Yeah.
Oh, how exciting. Can I come over to yours? That would be really nice. I tell you what, one of the things is, since COVID, I've gone off my food a bit, which is not a bad thing as far as I'm concerned, really. So I sort of tend to be eating as we fancy later on, rather than pre-planning. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
But I'll tell you one of the things I might do, though, and I've been a bit inspired by Dorothy, is I might go and flick a yellow duster about the place, because I've got a few nooks and crannies which could do with a bit of feather dusting. Or what about you?
I might do a bit of waxing, but I'll leave it at that.
I think on that note, I think we'll say ta-ra! Bye! Thanks for listening to our One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. If you'd like to see behind-the-scenes clips and bonus content, please visit our Facebook page, One Stiletto in the Grave podcast. And if you'd like to ask any questions, follow us on Twitter at OneStiletto65. This podcast is produced by Raggedy House Productions, and the music composed by Tom Smith. See you next time!